All right, today we're talking about what do you do if you identify as an entrepreneur and you've exited your business? What happens to your identity? My guest today is Craig Swanson. He's been on the podcast before. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome everyone. John Corkin here. And if you've listened before, every week we have interesting and smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. We've had Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Check out the archives. Lots of great episodes in there. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise25, our company where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. And you can learn more at rise25.com and learn about our new podcast co-pilot platform by checking that out. And I want to give a quick shout out to an organization that helped bring this podcast together. It's EO Seattle. EO Seattle is a local chapter in Seattle of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 18,000 influential business owners with 200 chapters across 60 or so countries. So if you're the founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company that generates over $1 million a year in revenues and want to connect with other like-minded successful entrepreneurs, go check it out. EO Seattle is the chapter for you if you live in the Seattle area. All right, my guest here today is Craig Swanson. He is a longtime entrepreneur, started a number of different companies, including CreativeLive, which you may know, and he's exited a number of different companies as well, including his personal startup studio, where he partnered with other companies that had online brands, wanted to build online businesses, and help build them up, and has also sold a number of those. And so, Craig, so excited to have you here today. First of all, let's dive into your background. Now, we've done previous interviews where we talked about CreativeLive, and then you started partnering with other brands, people that had a following, but that maybe hadn't monetized it enough, hadn't created enough of a business behind that. And one of those you did that with was Sue Bryce, who's a photographer. Talk a little bit about what you guys did together, how she came to you, and what she was looking for when she partnered with you.
Okay, that's great. So Sue Bryce was a friend of mine and someone I'd worked with at CreativeLive for years, since around 2010. And about 2014, she spun off her own dedicated education platform called Sue Bryce Education. Got it to a certain level and really was looking at how she could really take this thing and just supercharge it. And she, at that time, I had exited CreativeLive. I was working on some other projects, and then she invited me to come in along with two other partners to basically help her build that business. And that's kind of the role I played for the last 7 years after CreativeLive, which is basically partnering with instructors that have a significant following, a lot of expertise to share. So we basically built out an entire education platform for her around her portrait photography business, expanded out to conferences, expanded out to actually creating an entirely separate platform called the Portrait Masters, which was for other photographers to teach on. And really just like built that up over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, we accepted an offer for it to be acquired. It's being acquired by one of the largest trade show companies in the United States that had a large photography division that they were looking at bringing in content that wasn't tied to physical people in physical conferences.
Definitely an acute need at that moment in time.
Exactly,
So good timing,
exactly.
yeah.
Side note, they had pandemic insurance, which is one of the reasons why they were able to fund a lot of these acquisitions.
Wow, that's
So
probably unusual for many conference companies.
it was. There's some VP years ago made that choice
Wow.
and really saved the company.
Wow. But I want to put money on that guy,
Mhm.
whoever was like, there might be a global pandemic one
Yeah,
day. And everyone else was like, oh, what a waste of time. But go ahead, Fred.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that deal closed in 2021. And just overall, that kind of like that whole arching thing, I think the pandemic basically made all these online education platforms I've been building over the years two things: a lot more valuable. And so we made a lot of money during the pandemic, and all of those assets became more valuable. We ended up selling them off one at a time, largely driven by the stakeholder was the lead person in each company. Because we're basically building around an individual influencer's brand.
Right, right. And talk to me a little bit about how you decided who to partner with, because that's a big decision. You weren't being hired as these weren't clients of yours. You were actually partnering with them. So it seems like a bigger, more weighty decision.
Exactly. I mean, so the way we worked it is, I mean, technically, that's one of the things I'm personally struggling with is I've never been a hireable person. Um, so I wasn't looking for clients, I was looking for business partners. And so I actually would come in with a team and money, and we would help build them something together, and we'd own what we built together as a unit. They often basically controlled their brand, their name. They basically were kind of the visionary and driver of that particular thing. And then we were building out all the tools and all the execution and all the marketing and all the scaling and entrepreneurial stuff underneath the hood.
Yeah. And so you make that decision, and then what about the decision to exit? Is that hard to come to terms with that? Like, is that like a joint decision that you made with each of the different partners?
Pretty much everybody. So each partner gets to kind of decide. So like Sue Bryce, Sue is in control of her brand, her name, her identity. And when we were looking at all the opportunities, we were looking at the offers that were being made. Ultimately, it was her choice. Ultimately, she's the one that gets to control the destiny of her name and everything else that she's built. And once she decided that she was ready to hand off this photography side of her business to someone who acquire it, we basically helped make all that happen.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, so she's continuing on and she's building education in other areas. The photography side is now owned by Emerald, which is the name of the company, and she is still a part of that, but is being now run by a different company.
Now, you're a very rare individual who understands how to build really like an online brand, an online business, and monetize it. And I can't tell you how often I talk to, professional services people, business owners that are frustrated with what they've been doing. Maybe they've been doing it for a long time. They're sick of clients or something like that. And the grass is always greener. What do you say now to people like that who are saying, oh man, I wish I had that kind of business?
Well, I mean, so to be really honest, when they point at the businesses I built in the past, though they were businesses I built before the pandemic, they're businesses I built in different worlds view in a different time. One thing that the pandemic did is it educated every single company that had any type of service that was delivered face to face, that if they did not have an ability to do some type of online version of that company, they were at risk of not being relevant. And so I would say that between the year 2020 and 2022, the things I had built over my career became a lot more valuable. But also, probably those years, probably the world moved forward a decade or two in its overall understanding of how to build, monetize, and create online platforms. And the competition has really exploded. So I would say, in some ways, we've shifted a little bit from the gold digging days of earlier, where you were basically
Where there's gold nuggets everywhere.
Exactly. So I've made my career not selling content on how you build online content platforms. I've just made my career by creating wealth and communities with people that are really good educators and really good brand leaders.
And you were an early adopter. I mean,
Yeah.
really early adopter before people like online education. Why? That's silly.
Exactly.
Like we want to learn in person. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you feel like it would be a lot more competitive now. Is there like a bleeding edge now? I mean, there's AI technology, there's new things coming in. Like, is there new areas that you're excited about or that you look at and say like that's kind of the bleeding edge?
I mean, the bleeding edge for me is AI. So I have definitely been playing with AI for the last 3 or 4 years and really digging into it. And I've got this kind of picture of what an AI enhanced learning platform looks like and feels like. So with CreativeLive back in 2010, we were playing with online broadcast. Today, we're doing an online broadcast right now, you and I.
Yeah.
I mean, it is incredibly common these days. But in 2010, it was uncommon. It was difficult to do. Everyone was doing postage-sized video stamp or postage-sized video. We were trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to do bigger things. Um, there is this world that we are entering into, um, in which AI is able to do translations of learning styles between instructors and learners. And that's happening a lot. So the kind of the recent projects I've been working on, we've been able to do with maybe a 1 or 2 person team, what we used to do with a 10 person team,
Mhm.
because AI is basically able to streamline down so much of the creation and organization of what we're creating.
So if someone's a visual learner and someone's an this is a simple example, but someone's a
Yeah.
visual learner, another person in the class or, group,
Mhm.
a cohort or whatever is a more of an audio learner, or if they learn better with a fast talker versus a male versus a female talking, like all
Mhm.
those different kind of nuances could potentially, as we move forward, could be relevant for so that the person, the student that's learning can learn in the way that they want to learn.
Absolutely. And we're seeing some of this coming up. But for example, um, a lot of instructors, a lot of experts that are not necessarily full-time teachers, but they are really strong instructors and they're really very, very deep knowledge. Kind of the most natural place for a lot of those people to go is a Socratic teaching style with a small group of people. So if you were going to teach a class on podcasting, well, we won't say you, but someone that had deep expertise, like one of the most natural places for a teacher to go is to basically teach a small group of people between 4 to 10 people and have a rough outline, but teach the class very, very Socratically so that as they're teaching things, people are asking questions and there's this back and forth. Now, that's a very natural way to teach, but it's not always the easiest type of content to consume if you're a learner. If you're a learner, those side conversations, everything else kind of going left and right, you get a little bit lost and you're kind of like losing your main point.
Mhm.
Um, but with AI, what is happening increasingly is we can take an expert that teaches Socratically, that doesn't necessarily have a really strong delivery for everything from point A to point B. They do a little bit of Socratic back and forth, and use AI to basically interpret that and then reconstitute it into more of a one-way endpoint for a learner on the other side of that conversation.
Yeah,
And
it's
then and then you can
good.
also say break it down into smaller chunks. If you have people that tend to want to learn in smaller chunks, that's a possibility. It really lets individual learners start to change the way they consume the education. And we
Yeah.
are just seeing the hints of that right now, but it is increasing every couple months.
It's amazing because,
Mhm.
like 10 years from now, maybe we'll look back and we'll be like, remember the old way of learning? It was so
Mhm.
barbaric, much like, we look back at like 100, 200 years ago, the way that people used to learn back then and think that it, misses the mark and, all the new ways we have of doing it. I want to ask you though about for
Mhm.
you personally, exiting these businesses, you've sold your portfolio. What has it been like for you in this journey, moving from someone who's been so forward focused, who thinks about the future so much, to shifting your role and kind of talking about some of the things you've done in the past?
It honestly it's been a difficult time. I have sold, I think I've sold probably 6 businesses over my career, and I think all 6 businesses are still running. Um, and each time I sold them, I went through this kind of rebirthing process of loss of identity, trying to figure out who I was. Um, but I've also always had a portfolio of businesses. So when I sold Sue Bryce Education, I had other business. I had Kaisa Fit, which was an online fitness company. I had these other companies. But between 2000 and 2022, I actually sold all the companies in my portfolio. So whereas I felt like I understood what that process was of moving past a company that I built and that sense of not being connected to it, I had never done it where I didn't have another one I was doing on the side.
Mm.
And so I would say that like the last 2 years they've been joyful and there've been some freedom. And also there's been a lot of me not knowing what's next, not really knowing what I'm working on next. And in my role in the Seattle EO group and on the board and just different things. I do spend a lot of time now trying to figure out whether I'm in retirement, if I'm in retirement, what that looks like. Um, if I'm not in retirement, what it looks like to not be hitting the type of home runs that I used to hit at what I consider the high point of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a lot of self-questioning and self-reflecting, trying to decide what I am without this thing I do, which is building and creating and selling businesses.
If you look back on it now, is there
Mhm.
anything that you wish that you did differently? Maybe you went back to, let's say, 2019 before you sold the most recent batch of companies?
I mean, the one thing I've told people, well, there are two things I tell people. There are two things I tell people that I wish I had learned. Number one is if you have multiple businesses, keep one for yourself. Like I don't think I would ever um, sell all my businesses again if it
Mm,
were fully up to me. No, no. In these cases, I'm always with partners, so I'm not really sure I had an option of not selling a business,
hmm
but I didn't realize how much that mattered to me.
mm.
And this is silly, but it's honestly something I was never really a strong self promoter. Um, take selfies with all the famous people that you work with.
I was not expecting that tip.
hmm it's one of the things I've told other people that work with a lot of people, and I never did. I never liked being the guy grabbing my camera and doing a selfie. But I'll tell you what, if I had a selfie with all the famous people I've worked with, it does really simplify the act of explaining,
Yeah.
why you matter and what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
hmm
my business partner jokes that I like to Photoshop myself into photos with famous people over my
hmm
shoulder here. So
hmm
there's always that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
you know a thing or two about photography, so maybe you could just Photoshop yourself
I
in.
think I could do it just straight with AI now. That's actually a good idea.
Exactly,
hmm
exactly. It's problem
hmm
solved.
Yeah.
Well, I know that your involvement in EO Seattle has been a big, important role for you, giving you some purpose and things like that. And you were
hmm
really involved as chair of the Accelerator program, which I'm a
hmm
graduate of. Talk a little
hmm
bit about what that role has played for you as you've moved through this kind of life change.
Well, so first of all, I've been in EO now for I think coming up on 7 years, and EO has just been transformative for me. It is it. I feel like I have found my crowd, the people that I have felt less weird in EO than I have felt in most places in my life, just
Mhm.
because these are people that these are fellow entrepreneurs that deal with the same types of issues that I've dealt with in my career.
Yeah.
And when in the time that we were selling our businesses, Lisa McLean, who was the president that year, asked me to step up and be the chair for the EO Accelerator program. And I love EO Accelerator. EO Accelerator, for those that don't know, EO is for entrepreneurs that are doing that are managing a company, owning a company, doing over $1 million a year in turnover. Accelerator is a program for entrepreneurs that are breaking 250,000, but have not yet figured out how to scale and break $1 million a year.
Yep.
And I actually audited the Accelerator program the very first year I was in EO. I have been a coach in Accelerator for most of my years in EO, and basically that meant I was working with a small group of entrepreneurs and helping them work, and leading the Accelerator program in Seattle. The 2 years prior to now, it is probably one of the most enjoyable and tiring experiences I've had in EO. It was a lot of work, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Mm.
Um, but I am incredibly proud of the Seattle EO Accelerator program, and the type of difference it's making in entrepreneurs' lives. I love that space of young entrepreneurs in their journey, trying to figure out how to get a company that works, trying to figure out how they work their relationship with the business, how they get out of their own way, how they
Yeah.
can lean on others, how they build a team, how they can make the money work. All of these things that sometimes we're playing with at a little bit higher level in EO because we've got bigger businesses. It is so refreshing and enjoyable to like be working with people that are in those early stages of like making it through that threshold the first time.
Yeah, it helps you remember how much value you can provide to someone
Hmm.
like that by helping guide them through something.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the examples of folks who've been through the accelerator program and graduated from it, become members of EO. I know there's been a number of them.
Well, okay. So the EO Accelerator graduate that I know most deeply and that I'm most proud of is Jennifer O'Neill. Jennifer O'Neill runs a company in Seattle called Live Oak AV, and they provide AV support for conferences, events, live seminars, and three things about Jennifer. First of all, Jennifer was an accelerator for I think 5 years. So she was in the accelerator program for 5 years. I was a coach of hers in accelerator for about a year, and I was a coach of hers when the pandemic hit. So Jennifer had a business
Ooh, an
that
AV company in the pandemic. Oof, rough.
exactly.
Yeah.
Jennifer went from almost being EO qualifying,
Mm,
almost breaking $1 million a year, to I think having her entire business shut down.
yeah.
And she she is just an extraordinary entrepreneur. She pivoted. She was working. She worked so hard to not go out of business.
Mm,
She converted her team into delivering food because she had a team of vans out there, and so
wow.
she just took stock of what she had access to because she no longer had access to her core business.
Mm.
And she figured out how she could reinvent those resources to keep herself
I
in business.
love that. I love that scrappiness when people
Hmm.
just are like, okay, what can I do? And they just take it one step at a time and find something new
Exactly.
to do.
She graduated 2 years after that. So she graduated up into the big EO. So she broke $1 million a year, completely reinventing her business, completely redoing everything. She's now one of my forum mates in my EO forum,
Cool.
um, and is the chair for EO Accelerator,
Wow.
um, and is right now leading. I mean, I'm really proud of what we did within the 2 years that I led Accelerator. The thing that I think I had the biggest impact in the legacy for the Seattle EO Accelerator is I got Jennifer signed up as my co-chair early. And then we actually brought in an EOS implementer, um, Zach Kramer, to help lead and coach the Accelerator board on how to function well as a board.
Oh,
And
cool.
between having Jennifer in for a year before she took over, having really great leadership on the board level, that program is just growing and churning along. I just love
Very
watching it.
cool. Very cool. And I've had Zach on the podcast. He's great. And then talk
Zach is
about
amazing.
some other current accelerator members. I know there's some interesting ones that are currently in the program.
So I am still coaching in Accelerate. So I've got a whole batch of women that I am coaching in Seattle. I mean, my favorite, and she's given permission for me to talk about her business outside of Accelerator, has a company called Bonnie Ray. So Bonnie Ray Catering. And she is an accelerator. She is a Michelin star rated chef. I don't really know if that's the correct term, but she used to cook in
I
Michelin
think
star
so. I
rated.
think that's pretty amazing. That's
Yeah,
the Academy Award of food.
exactly. And before starting her current business, she was the private chef for the Charles Munger family
Wow.
on their summer holidays. And
Wow.
so she has cooked for Warren Buffett, she's cooked for Charles Munger. And if you go to her about page on her site, there's an entire list of people that she has cooked for, and she is amazing. And she's cooked for some incredibly wealthy families.
And hopefully she took
Uh,
selfies with them.
you know what? I don't know. See, that's my advice to everybody is
I don't,
like,
yeah.
so here's the thing. None of us like doing, or there's certain people that love doing the selfies. So yeah, that's totally, she should have taken my advice
I
in
know.
prep.
She should
Hmm.
have. Yeah, yeah. So that's a great one. And then talk a little about I know your role on the board has kind of been you've been kind of like an entrepreneur in residence. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like using your expertise and talk a
Hmm.
little bit about the EO board and your president, John Peltonen, I believe is his name.
Hmm.
Some of the things that you guys have been working on this year.
So this year with the board, with Jennifer O'Neill stepping in to run the accelerator program, I am the EO learning chair for Seattle, which means that it's my responsibility to basically schedule and put on the educational side for the Seattle chapter. Um, and one of John's big priorities as chapter president this year is creating stronger connections between EO members. So one of the things I did that I feel was a little risky or a little different than normal. normally we try to fly in a bunch of really big name people to teach at different programs for Seattle. This year, I'm really trying to go in and I was really trying to find instructors and teachers and experts inside the Seattle EO community that we could basically create a stage for and teach. So we've actually been doing a lot more of creating space for our own members to teach for other members. And so pretty much everybody that has taught in this year in EO for Seattle has had a really strong connection with EO, and including yourself. You are coming up, so like you are.
I'm super excited. I'm coming up in January. Yeah,
we're coming up in January, and there's actually I think I counted somewhere around 10 or 12 EO members have podcasts right now running that you've helped them start and be running, and so
at least that many, yeah.
And so this really falls in line with like what we're doing for community, for connection. We're basically trying to create this space where rather than trying to create really impressive events, we're trying to create maybe more deeper events where we are learning to lean into each other, learn more about each other, and connect with the talent and expertise that is already within the EO community, either in Seattle or along this coast.
I think that's great. I was just having a conversation this morning with another EO member who was, we were talking about that power of connection. And I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or because we're all on our digital devices these days, but I think that in-person connection is so important and so valued these days. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that. And that's really cool. Yeah. Well, great. Well, so we'll wrap it up there. Where can people go to learn more about you, Craig, and learn more about the EO Seattle chapter?
Well, for Seattle, you know what? I don't know the URL. I think it is eoseattle.org.
I believe it is EO Seattle. Yeah.
eoseattle.org. And then I'm available at craigswanson.org. Although come look at EO, like if you're an entrepreneur in the Seattle space, or if you are an aspiring entrepreneur that have not broken $1 million yet, but are looking for that team of people to help you get above it, the Accelerator program is something that'd be really great to look at. Yeah, and the other thing is all these education things we're doing. If you know someone that's an EO, like you can find them on LinkedIn. We are also creating space, so at least 10 spaces in every upcoming education space that we've got for EO this coming year. We are allowing people to bring guests. So if you are interested in what we're talking about, come find someone that can invite you in and be part of this.
That's great. Craig, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.